Joseph Smith's second plural wife was Lucinda Pendleton, the wife of anti-Mason William Morgan.
Ironically, just a few months before his marriage to Lucinda, Joseph made this statement. When asked, "Do the Mormons believe in having more wives than one?" Joseph Smith said, "No, not at the same time, but they believe that if their companion dies, they have a right to marry again."
Yeah. Anyway, Lucinda was born in 1801, so yes, she is actually older than Joseph Smith.
One description of her survives from when she was 42 years old. She was a short person with light hair and very bright blue eyes, and a pleasing countenance.
Lucinda was married to famous William Morgan. Morgan was an anti-Masonic martyr who had been kidnapped and murdered before he could print his exposé on the Masons. After the death of her first husband, Lucinda married a man named George Washington Harris. The two were married November 30th of 1830. So George was actually a Mason, but by this time he had withdrawn from it.
In August of 1834, Orson Pratt served a mission in Indiana and baptized both George and Lucinda. In September of 1835, George bought land in far west Missouri. In early 1838, the Saints of Missouri organized to give the prophet a proper welcome when Joseph Smith reached Far West. On February 24th, George Washington Harris was appointed to meet Joseph Smith with wagons and financial aid. On March 14th, Joseph recorded, "We were immediately received under the hospitable roof of George W. Harris, who treated us with all the kindness possible. Here we refreshed ourselves with much satisfaction after our long and tedious journey."
The Smiths stayed with the Harrises for 2 months before they moved into their own house. Again, we see the pattern of Joseph Smith pursuing women who he had at one point lived with.
There is no firm date for Joseph's marriage to Lucinda, but these 2 months are a good possibility. Joseph was 32 and Lucinda was 36. It was likely that George Harris gave permission for the marriage since he was a close friend of Joseph Smith, as well as a church leader. He later stood as proxy for Joseph in the Nauvoo Temple, as his wife was sealed to the dead prophet for time and eternity. In July of 1840, George was sent on a mission to collect funds and materials for a church publication. His mission lasted a year, and he returned home September 1841. Though there is no record of intimacy, one can speculate that during this time, Joseph and Lucinda had physical relations. Another aspect that might hint at sexual relations is that in 1842, the Relief Society began with Emma Smith as the president, and Lucinda's name never shows up in the minutes. It is possible that there was tension between the two women on account of them both sharing the same husband.
So just to be clear, Lucinda and Joseph were sealed for time and eternity, while to her own husband she was sealed for time only. To me, this signifies the union that she and Joseph might have shared during his mortal life.
Interestingly, in a council meeting held on June 10th of 1844, George was in support of the Nauvoo expositor being destroyed. Harris spoke from the chair and expressed his feelings that the press ought to be demolished. On June 27th, just 17 days later, Joseph was killed at the Carthage jail. Lucinda wept over his body, and her whole frame convulsed.
What becomes of Lucinda after this is mostly guesswork.
In an 1856 newspaper, George's lawyer wrote the following: "To Mrs. Lucinda Harris, Madam, you are hereby notified that there will be a file in the clerk's office in the district county of Pottawatomie County, Iowa, the petition of George W. Harris claiming of you a divorce from the bonds of matrimony now existing between you and the said George W. Harris, and charging you therein with willfully deserting him, and without reasonable cause, absenting yourself for more than the space of 3 years."
So basically, Lucinda abandoned her husband. According to a Mason writer who tracked down the wife of William Morgan, Lucinda later joined the Catholic Sisters of Charity and served in the hospital during the Civil War in Memphis, Tennessee. So other than the fact that in this same year Joseph Smith was denying polygamy, and then living polygamy, and that Emma Smith gave birth to their son Alexander, and of course the fact that Lucinda was already married. But yeah, other than those minor things, I don't see much of a problem here.